My name is Morgan Hale, and I'm 38. The night my boyfriend texted, "I'm not coming back until you buy me the new Denali. I've earned it. My parents agree. Don't call me until you're at the dealership." Something inside me set down its grief, like a ruler on a drafting table, and reached for a pencil. I'm an architect. My work begins with soil, load, wind, and what a structure can bear without lying about it. For 8 years, I believed Evan and I were building something true. Love poured level, choices cured slowly. Tonight, his text replaced our footings with vanity. You don't negotiate with a crack. You investigate it. You mark it, measure it, decide whether to repair or remove the compromise section entirely. I typed one word. Understood. Then I opened my laptop and drew a new set of plans. First, subscriptions. Evan's life had been quietly scaffolded by line items in my name, curated streetwear boxes, a chef-crafted meal kit, a premium bourbon club he bragged about to his friends like it was a personality trait. Click, cancel, click, cancel, click. And because Entropy loves autopay, I reported my card lost and requested a replacement. In 48 hours, the recurring charges would hit air. Next, the phone plan. We shared a top-tier family account, mine. I slid his line down to the most basic tier, talk and text. Enough to call for help, not enough to doom scroll the lives of people he envied while composing ultimatums. The streaming services followed, passwords changed with the same soft finality as a door that seals when it's square. This wasn't spite, this was math. He had declared himself a non-participant until I purchased him a status symbol. Very well. I aligned the resource allocation with his stated position. If you step off a job site mid-pour, you don't get paid for the finished slab. The townhouse went quiet in that custom way a house does when it realizes it's protecting one person instead of two. Past the kitchen, in my home office, the corkboard waited with its constellation of vellum. Sections and elevations of the forever home I'd been sketching for years. The dream wasn't grand. A modest line of windows angled to catch winter light, a porch that faced east, a studio with north glass so I wouldn't chase shadows across drawings. I touched the main elevation the way you touch a bruise, gently, and to be sure it's still there. At first, sadness was the only thing with weight. Then I read his message again, "I've earned it," and sadness slid off the scale, replaced by a steadier element, resolve, heavy as concrete. My computer chimed. An email from the credit card company. New card on the way. Another from the meal kit. "We're sorry to see you go." I brewed tea I wouldn't taste, then opened a blank document titled Contingencies and listed calls to make in the morning. The attorney my mentor swore by, a locksmith, and, if it came to it, a civil standby request I hoped never to use. Around midnight, a notification lit the screen. Not Evan. Robert, his father. "Morgan, good, you picked up. We've got a little misunderstanding that's gotten out of hand." Robert's voice has the varnish of a handshake deal you're meant to accept because the hand is older. "Not sure what there is to misunderstand," I said. "Evan sent an ultimatum." "Don't be difficult, dear. Evan's been torn up. His phone's acting up. You're being cold. Let's get him back home and talk like adults, man, well, you know what I mean." "Robert," I said, "this is between Evan and me. If he wants to talk, he has my number. He's a sensitive man. He just wants to feel appreciated. A new car isn't a big ask for someone in your position." Barbara and I have always provided, and we expected his partner to continue that. There it was. Their family's philosophy poured perfectly level. Evan wasn't a partner. You transferred him like a dependent between providers. My tone cooled. "My position," I said, "is that partnership means respect. Ultimatums aren't respect. Holding our relationship hostage for an SUV isn't respect. Encouraging it isn't respect." The warmth fled his voice. "Watch your tone. We're his family. We're helping him get what he's owed." "What he's owed," I said evenly, "is an adult conversation with me, alone." I ended the call, palm steady. The tea had gone cold. The house had not. The next day stretched long with the bureaucratic poetry of consequences. New card number confirmed. Locks scheduled for tomorrow. My attorney's assistant, Marta, voice like polished stone, fit me in for a consultation next week. "Bring the text," she said. "Bring dates. Bring receipts." By late afternoon, the notifications got petty. A streaming app attempted a login from an unfamiliar device. Denied. Then a chain of texts from Evan, each one trying on a different costume. Sarcasm, hurt, magnanimity, anger. I didn't respond. Somewhere between wow, petty, and you'll regret this, he played his next card. Headlights swung across my front window. A black sedan idled in the driveway. The front door opened before I reached it. Evan stepped in, flanked by Robert and Barbara, his expression lacquered into something like management. "We need to talk," he announced, as if summoning an intern. I didn't cross the threshold. "We will," I said, "after your parents go back to their car." Barbara's smile was a blade. "Nonsense. We're here as mediators to ensure a productive—" "This isn't a mediation," I said, keeping my eyes on Evan. "This is an ambush. We can talk when they're outside." Evan lifted his hands in performative caution. "I'm not going in there alone with you. You've been hostile. Frankly, I'm scared." I almost laughed. 2 weeks of silence, one ultimatum, and I was the hazard. "If you need protection, that speaks volumes. You have 1 minute to ask your parents to return to the car or this conversation is over." Robert started to puff up, old world authority with new world entitlement. Evan saw that my face had no further settings. He sighed. "Fine, wait in the car." They retreated, windows cracked like eyes. Evan swept past me into the hallway. "I cannot believe the childish games," he said, his voice rising as he clocked the blank TV, the missing meal kit on the counter. "My data, my shows, my boxes, financial abuse, Morgan." "Or," I said, closing the door, "a reallocation of luxuries for someone who declared himself out until I buy him a car. You can pay for your own entertainment." "With what money?" He laughed, sharp and humorless. "You know what I make. You're supposed to be my—" He stopped himself, then sneered at the corkboard in my office. "Oh, please, don't start with your silly little drawings." He walked straight to the board. "This ridiculous dream house. It was never going to happen. It's your hobby, to keep you busy." The word hobby landed harder than any insult. Years of lines and light, the very soul of our future, dismissed as a pastime. He reached for my shelf and began sliding first edition architecture books into a tote. "Consider these collateral," he said. "Those are mine," I said, my voice calm in the way a held breath is calm. He reached for the main elevation, hand-drawn on vellum. He unpinned it and, with vindictive carelessness, began to fold. Not along the lines, not kindly. A crumple bloomed. The woman who loved him vanished. The architect remained, watching demolition. I stepped back and dialed. "Yes," I said to the operator, keeping my eyes on Evan's face as realization widened there. "I'd like to report a domestic disturbance. My boyfriend, who has not lived here for 2 weeks, entered my home under false pretenses and is attempting to take and destroy my professional property. No weapons. His parents are waiting outside. I'm requesting officers to keep the peace." Words matter. Keep the peace is a bridge. Not judge, not jury, witnesses. Evan froze, then dropped the crumpled page as if it burned. When the officers arrived, the air in the living room changed temperature. They were steady, professional, and their faces tightened when Evan said, "I live here." They began to separate us, to take statements, to document. The night didn't end with sirens or epiphanies. It ended with an incident number on a small card and a room that had seen too much. The report would later read, neutrally, that the male party had been staying with his parents for 2 weeks, that a dispute arose over the female party's professional property, that parties separated for the evening. It wasn't a charge, it was better, a third-party snapshot of a fault line exactly where I'd marked it. After they left, I found the elevation on the floor, bruised but salvageable. I laid it flat beneath drafting weights, the paper sighing back toward memory. I slept in the studio with the lights off, the quiet no longer lonely, only precise. In the morning, I'd begin again, not with a sledgehammer, but with a plan. The morning after the incident report, I moved through my house like I was walking a site after a minor quake, cataloging hairline fractures, checking door frames for square. The lock guy came at 9. He was brisk, boots clean, the kind of man who keeps a tidy truck and calls you ma'am without condescension. When he left, the door closed with a new confidence, a sound I hadn't realized I'd missed. Marta from the attorney's office squeezed me into a lunchtime slot the following Tuesday. "Bring the text, the incident card, anything that shows timelines," she said. Timelines I could do. I live in layers: preliminary, schematic, design development, construction documents. The story was ugly, but the paperwork could be beautiful. Evan didn't text that day. Robert did. We'll try again tonight. No need for theatrics this time. Family can sit at the table together like adults. As if the police report had been my performance. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a new folder on my desktop and named it Structural Assessment. Inside, scans of the ultimatum, screenshots of his social profiles, public of course, performance art needs an audience. Photos of the crumpled elevation slowly relaxing under weights. By afternoon, the amber cathedral of Bramble and Rye would already be humming with people like we used to be. Couples in good jackets and women who laugh like small silver bells. I realized, with a stab of something like anthropological curiosity, that every table holds a blueprint you can't see. So many plans, so many fault lines. Evan's next volley was a story post. A whiskey glass, an expensive label, the caption, "Leveling Up." The tag revealed Robert at the same table, Barbara's manicured hand in the corner of the frame. I took the screenshot, added the date and time to the file name. If you must live like a highlight reel, don't be surprised when the B-roll becomes discovery. 2 days later, the doorbell rang while I was still in my running shoes. Evan stood there alone, hands visible, contrition arranged on his face like a suit pocket square. "Can we talk?" he asked. "No parents, no cops." I let him in because I wanted to hear which script he'd chosen. "I'm sorry about the drawing," he said, eyes flitting to the office. "I was upset. You hurt me. You cut me off. It felt like punishment." "You sent an ultimatum," I said. "You left." I needed to feel backed. He rubbed his face. "They think you're controlling. They think you manage me. They think I'm a provider they can invoice." I kept my tone even. "They taught you that love looks like a parade of upgrades bought by whoever has the higher limit." He blinked. "That's not fair. Neither is calling an SUV earned instead of wanted." He glanced around as if expecting to find more luxuries I'd removed. "Look, I don't want to fight. Just restore my plan. Put the card back. We'll talk about the car." "You can restore your plan. You can get your own card." I folded my arms to keep from gesturing toward the board again. "Then we'll talk." The veneer slipped. "You're being cruel." "I'm being accurate," I said. "There's a difference." He stepped closer. "You're going to regret this." There it was, the low, familiar hum of manipulation dressed as prophecy. I remembered the sound it had always made in my chest, the way it used to loosen my boundaries by a half inch. It didn't this time. "I already regret plenty," I said. "This? Not yet." He left without slamming the door. That, too, felt like a tactic. A gentleman's exit for a performance review that hadn't gone to plan. That weekend, I met my friend Tasha for coffee in a place that smells like new beginnings and ground beans. Tasha is a structural engineer. We talk in metaphors and seismic ratings. I showed her the incident card. "He hates paper trails," she said, taking a sip. "Good. Make a road out of them." "His parents are doubling down," I said. "They think I'm cold." "You're precise," she said. "There's a world of difference. Precision feels like cold to people who survive on heat." I told her about the way his hands had moved toward the board before he even finished insulting it, like destruction was muscle memory. Tasha frowned. "The elevation?" she asked. "Cradled and weighted," I said, recovering. She tapped the table. "Get a safe for the originals. Lock up your first editions. Back up everything. If he files anything, it'll be a blitz, emotion, and speed. Your job is to slow time down. Judges love time slowed down." "Did I ever tell you," I said, "that he calls himself the prize in group chats? That he writes those captions about leveling up after I pay his bourbon club?" Tasha laughed without humor. "People who think their prizes always want podiums. You built him one. He thinks it's his now." Monday came with a message from Marta. Tues, 11:30 a.m. Confirmed. I arrived early. The conference room had glass walls and a view of a park where children made rules for games that would dissolve by snack time. The attorney, her name was Elena Ortiz, joined me with a yellow pad and the kind of calm that looks like a lake until you notice the ripples of wind. I gave her the story in lines, then layers, then load calculations. She let me finish before she spoke. "You two aren't married," she said. "That limits his claim set. He can still file for palimony, cohabitation support. He can allege unjust enrichment, claim he made career sacrifices while you advanced. He can seek temporary orders, a stipend, exclusive occupancy. He won't get the world, but he'll try to grab a continent. You brought the text? I slid over the printout. I'm not coming home until you buy me a new SUV. I've earned it. My parents agree. Don't call me until you're at the dealership. Her eyes narrowed with professional appreciation. And the incident card? She read. Good language. Keep the peace. Establishes he hasn't lived there for 2 weeks. Shows who initiated escalation. Any social media? I opened my laptop. Screenshots bloomed across the screen. Whiskey, designer bags, a spa check-in that coincided with a day he'd asked me for cash for gas. Elena nodded. Keep capturing. Add dates, times, and any geotags. We'll compare against bank statements if he demands support. Bank statements I pay for, I said, half to myself. Which cuts both ways, she replied. You're the one funding his leveling up. Stopping that is not abuse. It's ceasing a gift. Judges understand that. She outlined the likely timeline. Demand letter first, then temporary orders hearing if we didn't cave. A possible civil standby. For his belongings, supervised by an officer to prevent more paper-folding dramatics. Do you have inventory photos of your professional assets? She asked. I will by tonight. Do it. And this matters. Don't rage text. No sarcasm. No bait. If you write like a transcript you'd be proud to read out loud to a stranger in a robe. On my way home, I bought a fireproof safe. I photographed every book spine, every tool, every print, every pen I actually like, and the 7 I pretend to like when students borrow them. I labeled files like a person who trusts her future self. At 9 p.m., I got what Elena predicted. An email from a firm I recognize by reputation, Harrigan and Bloom. Subject: Demand to restore financial support and access. Notice of intent to seek temporary orders. Ms. Hale, our client, Evan Price, has informed us that you have unilaterally terminated essential services and financial support upon which he relied during your cohabitation. Your actions constitute financial coercion and abuse. Unless access to funds, phone, and streaming services are restored within 72 hours, we will petition the court for temporary relief, including 1. Exclusive occupancy of the shared residence, 2. Temporary support reflecting the standard of living during your relationship, and 3. Immediate restoration of services. Regards, C. Harrigan. I forwarded it to Elena and Marta. Within minutes, Elena replied. Reply. Received. Do not engage with Harrigan. We respond tomorrow. Keep documenting. Assume they'll try an unannounced visit. Call 911 if it escalates. We'll request a civil standby date so he can collect belongings without collateral. My front light clicked on, motion sensor catching a stray cat or a thought too big for the dark. I checked the porch camera. Empty. The new locks worked. The safe glowed faintly when I opened it to slide the flattened elevation inside a protective sleeve. The paper had relaxed, but you could still see where his fingers had tried to crease what wouldn't belong to him. The next morning, I woke to a flood of messages. Not from Evan, from Barbara. Morgan, darling, we're truly disappointed. We raised Evan to expect partnership, not punishment. This is beneath you. People are watching. Don't humiliate yourself with police again. I stared at that last line longer than I should have. The way abusers borrow the language of humiliation fascinates me. Consequences look like humiliation to people who rely on impunity. I took a screenshot, time-stamped it, filed it. At noon, Elena's response letter went out. Measured, factual, not 1 degree hotter than necessary. It attached the ultimatum. It summarized the incident report. It noted the 2-week absence. It expressed our willingness to coordinate a civil standby so Evan could retrieve his items without touching my professional equipment. It declined to restore luxuries. The sedan appeared again before sunset. This time, only Evan stepped out. He held a duffel, no entourage. He rang the bell twice, then 3 times. I let him see me through the beveled glass. I didn't open the door. He lifted his hands, palms out. I just want my things, he said through the door. We can be decent. We will be, I said, loud enough to carry. We'll schedule a civil standby. Your lawyer has the email. He smiled like a man who believes charm is a crowbar. Come on, Morgan, don't be like this. Like what? I asked. He didn't have a word. He had a look, a flicker of calculation that, for once, didn't find purchase. He lowered his hands and backed away. When he reached the car, he turned and called, "You'll pay for this. Judges hate vindictive women." I didn't answer. Instead, I held the incident card between my fingers like a talisman, the ink dry and ordinary and perfect. That night, I stood in my office and traced the ghost of the crease lines with my eyes. The drawing had survived him. The house would have too, if the foundation had been shared. You can't ask one wall to carry the weight of a cathedral. It'll bow, then crack, then teach you what gravity does to arrogance. Elena's calendar invite for the temporary orders hearing landed in my inbox at 9:17 p.m. The subject line was plain: hearing, support/occupancy. Evan Price. The date was soon enough to feel like a countdown and far enough away to give them time to posture. I shut off the lights. The new deadbolt turned cleanly. Precision, not heat. Process, not spectacle. The siege had begun. I would not rush the pour. The day of the temporary orders hearing arrived with the kind of sky architects dream of. Slate gray, diffused light, no shadows to hide behind. I wore navy, the color of calm authority. Elena met me outside the courthouse, her binder thick, her expression unreadable in the best way. Inside, the hall smelled of paper and nerves. Evan was already there with Harrigan, his lawyer, the shark in a silk suit Elena had warned me about. He caught my eye and smiled the way a child might at someone they used to fool. His parents sat a row behind him, Barbara whispering into her husband's ear like a stage director giving last-minute notes. The judge was older, pragmatic, the type who'd seen too many theatrics to be moved by charm. The bailiff called the case. We sat. Harrigan started strong, polished, practiced empathy. "Your Honor, our client has endured weeks of unilateral financial deprivation. Ms. Hale controlled all accounts, access, even his cell data. This is classic coercive control behavior. He's simply asking to maintain the standard of living they shared." Elena waited, then slid the first exhibit onto the table. Exhibit A. A message from Mr. Price, dated 3 weeks prior. "I'm not coming home until you buy me a new SUV. I've earned it. My parents agree." Exhibit B. A police incident report documenting that Mr. Price has been living with his parents since that message. Exhibit C. Financial statements showing Ms. Hale stopped funding non-essential luxury subscriptions after his departure. She turned one page like she was turning a gear. No threats, no harassment, just the reallocation of expenses. This isn't coercion, it's boundaries. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning the text printout. "Mr. Price, you sent this?" Evan shifted. It was a joke. Frustration. "It reads like an ultimatum." Harrigan tried to pivot, emotionally charged communications, misunderstandings, shared goals. The judge held up a hand. "Save the adjectives, counsel." Then he asked Elena, "Any evidence of abuse?" She shook her head. "Only evidence of entitlement." A chuckle rippled through the back row before the gavel restored silence. After 40 minutes, the ruling came, succinct, surgical. No exclusive occupancy. The residence remains with Ms. Hale. Temporary support of a modest amount is granted given Mr. Price's lower income. Parties will maintain civility. Next hearing in 90 days. A clean split. Fair, measured, quietly devastating to Evan. Harrigan tried to salvage face. "We'll revisit when further evidence arises." Elena nodded once, like a chess player closing a file on a known opening. The judge ended with a warning. "I suggest both sides minimize public commentary. Social media has a way of testifying for you." Outside the courtroom, Evan's smile returned, but brittle now, the kind that cracks under its own reflection. "Congratulations," he said. "You get to feel superior." "I get to feel safe," I said. "That's all." Barbara stepped in, perfume thick enough to choke composure. "You embarrassed this family," she hissed. "Then consider it a mirror," I replied, and walked away. 3 days later, the civil standby took place. 2 officers stood by the door as Evan collected his things under Elena's checklist. He grabbed clothes, a few framed photos, and the duffel that looked heavier than it should have. His eyes kept darting toward my office. One officer cleared his throat, a reminder. Evan's hand dropped. Before leaving, he paused at the doorway. "You really called the cops on me." "I really did," I said, "and they kept the peace, like I asked." He looked at the officers, at me, then muttered, Enjoy your fortress." "It's a home," I said. "Fortresses are for people at war." When the door closed, one officer gave a small nod, the kind professionals give when they've seen worse and are glad not to see it here. That night, the quiet felt earned. Weeks passed. Legal paperwork grew in folders, like sediment layers, discovery, counterclaims, affidavits. Elena coached me to move like water, not hammer. "Patience wins cases," she said. I understood. Architects build slow. Meanwhile, Evan's social media became its own testimony. His support payments funded weekends at rooftop bars, steak dinners, new beginnings, hashtags. Each post was a brick in the wall. He didn't realize he was building around himself. I documented everything, screenshots with timestamps, receipts from bank statements showing he wasn't saving, he was performing. Elena called it exhibit potential. I called it proof of gravity. His parents' involvement cooled once invoices from Harrigan's firm arrived. Entitlement is expensive to maintain. By month 5, settlement negotiations began. Harrigan entered with the usual theatrics. Our client is prepared to settle if Ms. Hale compensates him for the loss of lifestyle, provides a vehicle stipend, and releases certain shared assets. Elena didn't flinch. She opened our binder and began laying out evidence like tiles. Exhibit A, the ultimatum text. Exhibit B, the police report. Exhibit C, bank records showing frivolous spending of support funds. Exhibit D, his refusal to seek employment despite qualifications. Her tone was surgical steel. Mr. Price isn't seeking stability. He's seeking sponsorship. The foundation he stood on was Ms. Hale's income. The moment she stopped pouring concrete, he blamed the soil. Silence. Harrigan glanced at Evan, whose jaw tightened. He leaned forward, whispering, "Take it." Evan shook his head, whispering back, "No, we can get more." They couldn't. 2 weeks later, they settled. Temporary support would end within months. He'd receive a small transition payment. No claim to my retirement, my firm, or my intellectual property. The townhouse remained mine. Elena's email subject line said simply, "Finalized." I spent the next weekend doing something indulgent. Nothing. No drafting, no litigation, no strategy, just breathing in the silence I had rebuilt. Eventually, I retrieved the crumpled elevation, now professionally flattened, its scars faint as healed fractures. I framed it in black oak and hung it in my new office above the drafting table. Clients sometimes ask about it. I tell them it's a lesson. Every structure tells you what it can bear. The smart ones listen before they build higher. I didn't demolish the dream house design. I adjusted it, scaled down, simplified lines, stronger base. Last month, I bought a small plot outside the city, sloped land, nothing flashy. I'm drawing something for myself this time, 1 story, east-facing, a porch that can hold the morning light without complaint. Evan's name comes up less now. When it does, it's usually as a cautionary anecdote among mutual acquaintances, the guy who tried to negotiate love like a business contract. As for Robert and Barbara, they stopped calling. The silence from their side is its own apology. Sometimes at night, when the drafting lamp hums low and the paper is warm beneath my wrist, I hear that first word again. Understood. It's no longer an answer to a threat. It's a promise to myself. Because you can't build a future on demand. You build it on choice, on integrity, on soil that holds. And this time, the foundation is flawless.